Hello people! Today I will go out of my usual topics of debunking wars and talk about the issue of single men who are lonely and frustrated, known as incels. Something I understand very well myself, but that I think most people really got wrong for its cause. So just to define the terminology of what we talk about, incel means involuntary celibacy, which is also known as TFL for true forced loneliness. This is also related to MGTOW, which means men going their own ways, the rejection of a relation with women, and also PUA for pickup artists, which are the people selling so-called help for men to be more successful with women. Before starting, I want to be clear that I fully understand the pain of rejection and loneliness. I have experienced it myself, and in no way I want to make fun and ridicule anyone suffering from that. I also hope that talking about it may bring some help and relief, because I'm pretty sure that those suffering from that receive almost no empathy and are seen as losers. And as usual, I don't pretend to know everything. I could be wrong. I'm just expressing my thoughts here. And you are welcome to have a conversation with me if you disagree. Also, English is not my first language, so I know that I'm not the best speaker on YouTube. So the reason I do this video today is because I have almost never heard in the many videos I watch on this topic what I think is the fundamental cause of the modern problems between men and women. And I believe it's the only thing against which there is a legitimate complaint to be done. And I'm talking about the welfare state. People have been blaming sexual liberation, the pill, online dating, women working, urbanization, human nature, and hypergamy of women, as if only women wanted to date the best partner. And I'm not saying those things have no effects, but I'm pretty sure that the welfare state is the big issue, and that many of those other things are consequences of the welfare state. And you probably never heard most pickup artists talking about that, because there's nothing they can sell you for this. And I understand that criticizing the welfare state and feminism is not popular. I'm a libertarian, and I specialize myself in war revisionism, which is not very popular. But philosophy is not a popularity contest. So basically, as a libertarian, I think that all women in the world have the right to reject me or anybody else. And I know it's not fun, and it may mean staying single for the rest of our lives, which is quite a sad outlook. But unfortunately, I don't see how you can morally force a woman to be with you. That would be slavery and rape, and it's evil. Nobody owes you anything except to not initiate violence against you and respect your private property. I also rejected some women myself, and I really hated that because I felt some empathy for them. And I'm sure that some of you also rejected women because you did not find them attractive enough. So loneliness is not only for men. This is why I don't consider myself an involuntary celibate, because I'm very picky and I assume it. We cannot complain that women are picky and that they reject us if we do the same. That would be hypocrite. But we'll see on what we can complain, and also why women may be way more picky than they should in the current paradigm. So the welfare state. First of all, if you don't know what the welfare state is, it's the fact that right now in most Western countries, the government is paying for social security, which includes housing, healthcare, food, so-called education, and many more things. As I said, I'm a libertarian and I'm against the welfare state for many reasons. First, the welfare state is immoral because it requires the state to tax productive members of society, and this is theft. It's all done by the threat of violence. If you don't pay your taxes, you will learn why the police, the army, the justice system, and prisons exist. If you ever try to resist and keep what is yours, ultimately they will kill you. For more on this, search any libertarian videos on why taxation is theft. And I'm not saying I'm against paying for the services I use, and I really think that people who succeed in life should help those who need it. But it should be voluntary. The government, if ever it should exist, should be limited to protect individuals, property, and contract. Nothing more. It all comes back to the non-aggression principle. But now, why do I consider the welfare state to be the big problem for men-women relations and dating? And why do I relate this to the cause of incels? Most of you have surely realized that many women pretend that they want a good man who is nice, but in reality they often prefer the bad boys. The bad boys who look hot but that treat them badly at the end. We all know the story. The reality is that for some thousands of years, until the 1960s, a woman needed a man to survive and to have a family. She needed mostly two main qualities from a man: a good protector and also a provider to bring resources, whether money, food, shelter, while she was pregnant and took care of children and she could not really work to produce wealth. Women had to choose wisely. Choosing a weak man or one that would leave her could have dire consequences for survival. And because of that, the so-called bad boys were not very popular, even if they could be sexually attractive. I'm talking here about incentives and choice that have consequences. And there was some communities helping people finding good matches and helping those who would get bad luck. Also, I'm not saying it was perfect, but today women no longer need men as provider because of the welfare state. It has completely changed the dynamics and the incentives of dating. The feminist movements of the 20th century did some good things, but also some pretty bad stuff. For example, they gave women the right to birth control and abortion, the right to work, to sign contracts, to own property, and to divorce. And I all agree with those things, as long as it's not paid by taxpayers, as it is right now. I would never want to force a woman to live under those pre-1960s conditions that existed. But sadly, the feminist movements, and more broadly the left and socialist, but also the world wars with their central planning, All those things brought the welfare state, which replaced the natural role of a man as husband, father, and provider. For example, my mother was born in the 1950s. It was her father that paid for her needs and for my grandmother. It was not the neighbor or anybody else forced to pay big amounts of taxes. So, at that time, my grandmothers and women had to choose wisely. But today, a woman can have a child, and the government will pay for almost anything that the father used to pay. And I'm not saying it's big luxury, but having free healthcare, social security, subsidized housing, public schools, daycares, free abortions is enough to considerably change the incentive of women when they date. Because today a woman can choose a bad guy without the consequence that would have happened before the welfare state. And sadly, if you are a good man that would be a good husband and father and a good provider, women can reject you but still force you to pay for the children they will have with other men. And this is done through the welfare state. And this is fucking unfair and evil. So for me, this is the only thing you have the right to complain about. If you are working, paying taxes, and I mean more than what you receive from the government, and you are single and lonely, you are being screwed by that system. Women can reject you as a boyfriend, but drain some of your money through the government. Otherwise, no woman owe you anything the same way you don't owe anything to women who make bad dating choices. The only justice in the dating game is a fair free market without the welfare state. The philosopher Stéphane Molyneux of Free Domain, that I appreciate very much, and which I recommend you to listen for those subjects and many more, said something very simple and absolutely true, resuming most of the problems I mentioned. He said the following: men and women relations will normalize when the government will run out of money. It was from a video he made many years ago. I think it was called Bring Back the Patriarchy. So, the sentence I just read means that the end of the welfare state. Stéphane also said that there were no friend zone before the welfare state. Okay. The welfare state creates a lot of bad behavior by giving people wrong incentive, therefore making them irresponsible, lazy, unproductive, and dependent. This is the practical aspect of the welfare state, the moral one being that it's evil. The welfare state also leads to many degenerate sexual behavior and promiscuity because it's simple. Human nature responds to incentive. The welfare state is communism applied to charity and family. And communism, we all know that, was a total failure. If you don't know it, I think you need to learn about that. Communism failed every time it was tried, causing scarcity, poverty, misery, and more than 100 million of debt last century. This is why the dating market sucks, the same way it sucked to live in any communist regime. The welfare state fails to produce happy couples and families. But I'm not saying that you or myself are single only because of the welfare state. There are other reasons. When I said normalize, I meant that, normalize doesn't mean we will get women suddenly like that if the welfare state would disappear. Even without a welfare state, some people could still be single, but at least they would not be forced to pay for women who rejected them. And the end of the welfare state, which would be both morally and practically a very good thing, would not remove the competition in dating. It would still be a market, but a free and a fair market. There would be more real good guys and less bad boys, I'm pretty sure, but they would compete among themselves, and those who are more than just, let's say, good provider would get more success or would attract more attractive women and such things. The same way, a woman who is young and fertile would be more attractive than one who is old and sterile, even if they are both kind and virtuous person. And also on so many aspects, it could never be again like the 1950s. Advanced industrialization and deflation that happened under a free market would in some way make women more independent. Women will always be attracted by men who displays qualities that we associate with the concept of alpha male, which include being a good provider, a strong protector, but also being virtuous, confident, courageous, physically attractive, funny, and with some self-esteem. Right now, a woman just doesn't need to worry about the provider aspect, which is a big one. And that is why I think that the so-called bad boys, who are not real alpha males because they are not providers, they mostly display false confidence, and they are rarely virtuous person, but still they have more success than most of us with our low self-esteem and our neediness. Also, right now, the welfare state and the feminist ideologies, the extreme one, because of these things, women are way more picky than they would be in a real free market. Women would also, I think, be more attractive and more kind without the welfare state. There was a survey made by the dating website OkCupid that showed how Western women are ridiculously picky. That survey showed that women rated like 80% of men as unattractive and below the average, while men were rating women in a normal proportion of 50-50. So for me, it's proof that the welfare state corrupt the dating market. The welfare state also creates the situation where a lot of people grow up without a father, which a lot of incels are. It also allows a situation where some men have a lot of female sexual partner, which helps to create incels. We live in a world where a lot of people, but especially women don't face the economic consequences of their bad choice. But I'm telling you, they will soon, because the current system is so irrational, and there is so much debt and unfunded liabilities that cannot be ever paid. And printing money like they do right now will only create inflation. So, just a little bit of water. So, for me, being forced to pay for the welfare state is the only thing I feel I have the right to complain about. I also prefer to be single than divorced and even more screwed by the family court system. I like the person I am. I just feel sad not to have a lover and frustrated to have no real sex life. And I think it's a normal human reaction. I'm no longer ashamed about it, and it's why I made this video very openly. I could say that I even feel lucky for other aspects of my life. I'm healthy, I'm 6 foot tall, I have a good job with almost 6 figures, which would be great if the government was not stealing almost 40% of it. If you understand by my accent, I live in the province of Quebec, and we have probably the biggest welfare state of North America, and therefore the highest taxation rate. I mean, I work out, I have a very good hygiene, I can speak 3 languages, I have an IQ of 130, I recently bought a beautiful small farm. I'm not a shy person, but I have anxiety and depression issues. And with all the work I did on that, I still suffer from it. And as I said, I'm very picky. I find most women unattractive, and I have to assume and own the responsibility of that. It's not society's fault if I'm like this. So I cannot hate women for rejecting me because I display lack of confidence, anxiety, and neediness. Because it's in women's nature to find those things unattractive. The same way I find women unattractive for other reasons, like being overweight, and not being feminine, or unfertile, things like that. It's nature, it has nothing to do with being a good or a bad person morally. The libertarian philosophy is what helped me the most to accept my situation. Nobody owes me anything. And I have to offer value if I want to succeed, which requires working on myself to get better. And of course it helped me to understand how the welfare state was making it a lot harder. And that's why I'm talking about it today. So I would say, if you want to complain, please expose the evils of the welfare state that is destroying society. And do it in a confident way. Don't just blame feminism at large, because, as I said, some of its aspects were legitimate in history. The real issue is not feminism versus men, but socialism versus the free market. It's a free society that incentivizes and rewards virtue instead of punishing it under the current system. Right now, bad behaviors are subsidized while good ones are punished and taxed. So I'm not anti-feminism to protest my situation. I'm against forced redistribution and forced association because that's immoral. And I heard the most extreme things from some incels claiming the government should supply women for single guy, which is just fucking crazy for what it implies. It's the same entitlement mentality that most feminists have, to believe you deserve something from another human being's labors. This is evil because it's slavery. And as I said, I have compassion and empathy for those who are incels. I know how hard and painful it is, but I mean, you may need to start working on yourself physically and psychologically. With some good therapy to learn self-esteem and to try to heal your childhood trauma instead of listening to pickup artists or just complaining. Me, I channel my frustrations. against what is the real injustice, which I said is the welfare state, socialism, and also the family courts system and the discrimination laws against men. That is why I promote libertarian principle on this channel by opposing wars and socialism. This is the correct way of making the so-called incel rebellion. So I hope this can help you, and if you think I'm wrong, please tell me so in a polite way. I would be glad to have any conversation with anyone who wants to talk about it. So thank you very much for listening.